Everyone, there's a specific area on a female's frame that signals everything she's truly sensing, and the second she permits you to reach it, her soul and spirit are already yours. And I am not discussing some tacky pickup phrase or dominant male rhetoric. Stay with me because what I am about to disclose will entirely transform the way you interpret every single female cue forever. Hello again. I want you to pause for a moment and really absorb this, because what we're discussing today isn't superficial level allure. It is not about ruses, phrases, or scripted habits. It is about something much deeper. How a lady's frame expresses what her speech often cannot. There is a muted dialect occurring in every contact you have with a lady, and most guys are entirely oblivious to it, not because they're incapable, but because no one ever instructed them how to perceive it. Now, let me ask you something sincerely. Have you ever departed from a contact with a lady and pondered, I believe she liked me, but I'm not certain? Or perhaps the reverse. She was gracious, but something felt wrong. That bewilderment you felt, that doubt, it doesn't result from a lack of trial. It results from misinterpreting the cues that were right in front of you the whole duration. And once you begin comprehending this, you'll never view allure the same way again. Because here's the reality. Most individuals won't state out loud. Allure is seldom voiced plainly, but it is always shown physically. And no, not in the blatant ways you're imagining, not in flamboyant flirting or theatrical motions. It is subtle. It is visceral. It is occurring below awareness. A lady's frame is perpetually reacting to how she feels in your company, and those reactions are far more genuine than anything she could state out loud. What we're exploring today is that concealed stratum, the one that distinguishes guys who speculate from guys who comprehend. When a lady permits certain types of contact, she's not just being pleasant or complying with it. Her sensory system is making choices in real time. It is asking inquiries like, do I feel secure with him? Do I trust him? Does his company soothe me or produce stress? And the replies to those inquiries appear immediately through her frame. This is why two guys can do the identical same thing: reach for her palm, touch her back, stand near, and get entirely different responses. One feels organic, even invited. The other feels awkward, strained, or even repulsive. The distinction isn't the deed, it's the visceral experience behind it. And that's where most guys get it wrong. They center on what to do instead of comprehending what she feels. Let me give you a real-life case. Visualize you're sitting beside a lady at a lounge or cafe. Dialogue is moving. Things feel airy, maybe even jovial. At some point, you softly touch her arm while making a point. Now, here's where everything counts. Not the contact itself, but what occurs next. Does she subtly shift in nearer? Does she persist talking without halting the flow? Does her frame stay tranquil? Or does she brace slightly, change her stance, or make a bit of gap? Most guys overlook this second entirely, but this second is everything because her response isn't planned. It is visceral, and instinct doesn't deceive. What's occurring here is deeply ingrained in mindset and biology. Human beings are built to sense intent through contact. Research has revealed that people can detect sentiments like warmth, stress, power, or even unease through physical link alone without a single term being voiced. And ladies in particular are remarkably sensitive to this. A lady's sensory system is perpetually probing for visceral safety. It is not something she mentally ponders about, it just occurs. So when you touch her, she's not just noting the physical feel, she's reading your vibe, your poise, your visceral state, your sincerity. If you're stressed, hesitant, or trying too hard, she senses that. If you're serene, centered, and present, she senses that too. And this is why allure isn't something you can feign. It's felt. Now I want to take you deeper into this notion of visceral zones because this is where things begin to become very clear. View a lady's frame not just as physical area, but as strata of trust. Each zone signifies a different grade of visceral entry, and as you shift from one grade to the next, what you're really doing is shifting deeper into her sense of ease, safety, and bond with you. The first grade is what I term neutral territory. Arms and shoulders. This is where most contacts start, and it's also where many guys get trapped. A soft touch on the arm, a casual pat on the back. These are socially routine motions. They don't carry much weight on their own. If she permits this, it doesn't necessarily mean she's attracted. It simply means she's easy enough not to pull back. But even here, there's data. Is she open in her stance or slightly shut off? Does she slant her frame toward you or away from you? Does she keep eye contact or does she start to withdraw? These are tiny cues, but they count more than anything you could say. Because at this phase, she's not deciding if she wants you. She's deciding if she feels fine around you, and that's the base of everything. Now, let's move slightly deeper. Palms and wrists. This is where things begin to turn. Clasping palms isn't just physical link, it's symbolic. It signifies bond, presence, and a desire to share a second together. When a lady permits you to hold her palm even shortly, she's giving you a certain grade of entry emotionally, not just physically, but the wrist. That's where it gets more curious. The wrist is tender, it's exposed. It's not a spot people casually permit others to reach unless there's a degree of ease already settled. So if she's tranquil when you touch her wrist, if she doesn't pull back, if she even subtly reacts, that's a sign that her wall is dropping. Not totally, but clearly. And here's where I want you to pay heed to something vital. It's not about darting from one grade to the next. It's about whether she's beckoning you forward. Because when it's right, it doesn't feel like progress. It feels organic. There's a flow to it, a beat. And when you're in sync with that beat, everything becomes effortless. Now I know some of you viewing might be thinking, okay, but how do I know if I'm interpreting this right? That's a valid inquiry. So let me give you a basic drill you can start using instantly. The next time you're interacting with a lady, center less on what you're saying and more on how she's reacting physically. Not in an obsessive way, but in an alert, centered way. See her breathing, see her stance, see how her frame reacts when you slightly shift nearer or make soft contact. Does she copy you? Does she relax? Or does she make gap? These are your answers, not her terms, her frame. And once you start paying heed to this, something curious occurs. You stop needing constant proof. You stop speculating. You start knowing. And that poise, that quiet certitude, is incredibly alluring on its own. Now, we're about to go deeper into the next grades, the ones most guys totally misunderstand, especially when it comes to the torso, the spine, and eventually the most telling cue of all. Because there is one spot, one specific place where if she permits you in, it's no longer just ease. It's something much more potent. And in the next portion, I'm going to explain that down in a way you've likely never heard before. But before we go there, take a second. If this is already turning how you think about allure, tap that like button. Not just for the system, but because it informs me you want more of this kind of real, centered comprehension. And if you haven't joined yet, do that now, because what's coming next is where everything bonds. Now let's go deeper, because this is where things begin to part superficial level interaction from real visceral motion. We're shifting into a zone that most guys totally misread, not because they're reckless, but because they've been instructed to view allure in a very direct, almost robotic way. But allure isn't direct, it's layered, visceral, and deeply visceral. Let's discuss the waist and lower spine. This is what I term the visceral test zone. Here's why it counts so much. This is one of the first zones where a lady cannot fully view your motion. When you start contact, when you place your palm softly on her lower spine while leading her through a door, or when you stand near and there's subtle link at her waist, her reaction is almost purely internal. She doesn't have time to study it. She senses it. And in that tiny second, her frame answers one inquiry. Do I feel secure with him being this near to me without full command or sight? That's a potent mental second. If she braces, shifts away, or moves herself quickly, that's not denial in a cruel sense. It's data. Her sensory system is saying not yet or something doesn't feel right. But if she stays tranquil, if she slants slightly into you, if her frame doesn't resist that closeness, that's trust beginning to grow on a deeper level. And I want you to see something here. This isn't about power. It's not about claiming command. It's about how your company feels when you enter her area. There's a gap. A man who is centered, serene, and emotionally present can place his palm on a lady's lower spine, and it feels organic, even soothing. A man who is shaky, trying to dazzle or seeking proof can do the identical same thing, and it feels pushy. Same deed, totally different visceral force. And ladies sense that gap instantly. Let me share a quick real-life scene to make this plainer. A lady once recounted 2 different dates she went on. With the first man, everything looked good on paper, poised, well-dressed, saying the right things. But when he touched her lower spine while walking into a bistro, she felt a subtle stress. She couldn't explain it logically, but her frame didn't relax. With the second man, there was less show, less trying, but when he did the same motion, she didn't even ponder about it. Her frame stayed soft. She felt at ease. And later, she said something really telling. With one, I felt managed. With the other, I felt secure. That's the gap you need to comprehend. Now, let's move into an even deeper stratum, the neck and the face. Make no error, this is sacred area. Biologically, the neck is one of the most tender of parts of the human frame. It shields vital routes, your pulse, your breath, your life. So, when someone permits contact there, it's not casual, it's deeply visceral trust. And the face is essence. It's how we show ourselves to the globe. It's where sentiment is most visible and most shielded. So, if a lady permits you to touch her face, flick something away, hold her softly there, you are no longer in a casual contact. In this second, you're in visceral closeness. But here's the detail that most people overlook. It's not just about whether the contact occurs, it's about how she takes it. Does she soften? Does her eye contact grow? Does she halt even shortly as if the second slows down? Or does she pull back even subtly? Because again, her frame will tell you the reality before her terms ever do. Now, at this point, you might be starting to see the design. Each grade we move through isn't about growing physical contact. It's about growing visceral consent. And that consent cannot be forced, paced, or built. It has to be felt by her. And here's something I want you to really ponder for a moment. A lady doesn't open up like this because of what you do. She opens up because of how she feels around you. That's why some guys can follow every rule they've gained online and still feel like nothing works, while others seem to shift effortlessly through these grades without even trying. It's not method, it's presence. Now, we're about to move into the final grade, the one that links everything together, the one that shows more than terms, more than deeds, more than anything else we've discussed so far. But before we go there, I want to bring you into something more personal. Think about the last time you felt truly bonded to someone, not just attracted, but easy, seen, at ease. What produced that feeling? Was it something they said? Or was it how you felt in their company? That sense of ease of not needing to act, of just being able to live without stress. That's exactly what a lady is seeking for when she permits deeper levels of proximity. And if you can produce that area, not perfectly but truly, you don't need to hunt cues. They come to you. Now, here's a small but potent drill I want you to try. The next time you're with a lady, instead of focusing on dazzling her, shift your heed to centering yourself. Slow your breathing slightly. Relax your shoulders. Be fully present in the second instead of thinking ahead. And then see what occurs. Because when you adjust your own sensory system, you impact hers. Calm produces calm. Presence produces safety. And safety is the base of a lure that actually lasts. If this is starting to bond for you, take a second and drop a note below. Something basic like, I get it now, or this makes sense, I read those. And it also aids this reach more people who need to hear it. And if you've ever misread a cue before, and let's be honest, we all have, this is your chance to start viewing things differently. Now let's discuss the final grade, the one area that acts like a truth probe, the one cue that when it occurs organically tells you more than anything else we've explored. Because when a lady permits this, it's no longer just about trust. It's something deeper, something visceral, something she doesn't even mentally choose. And once you comprehend this, you'll never second-guess her senses in the same way again. Now we reach the final grade, the one that quietly shows everything, the hair. And I know at first that might not sound as vital as everything we've built up to, but this is exactly why most guys ignore it and completely miss what it actually means. Hair isn't just physical, it's emotional, it's symbolic, it's deeply personal. For most ladies, their hair is linked to essence, womanhood, self-style, even command. It's something they fix when they're anxious, play with when they're flirting, mend when they want to feel more poised. It's one of the few parts of the frame that is constantly being kept, touched, and shielded by them. So, when a lady permits someone else into that area, it's not random. It's telling. But let's slow this down because this is where detail counts more than ever. It's not about you reaching for her hair. It's about her permitting it, and more importantly, how she reacts in that second. Because this isn't a mental choice she's making, this is her sensory system speaking. If your palm shifts softly organically, maybe flicking a lock away, maybe your fingers lightly moving through and she slants into it. If her head tilts slightly without her thinking, if her eyes soften or even shut for a brief second, if there's a small raw grin that appears without effort, that's not show. That's not manners. That's a full frame reaction. That is what we call visceral safety, meaning physical ease at the same time. And when those two bond, something potent occurs. Her wall drops without her needing to decide to drop it. Now, let me be very clear about something because this is where people misinterpret and misuse data like this. This is not a tactic. This is not something you try to make occur because the moment it becomes forced, planned in the wrong way, or led by a result, it loses everything that makes it real. And she will sense that instantly. Recall what we discussed earlier? Ladies don't just sense the contact, they sense the intent behind it. So, if that intent is rush, desire, or trying to get somewhere, her frame will shut off just as quickly as it opened. But when it occurs organically, when the bond has already been grown, when the trust is there, when your company feels centered and safe, this second doesn't feel like rise. It feels like a sequel. And that's the gap between a lure that flows and a lure that breaks. Let me share something that really captures this. A lady once recounted a second she had on a quiet night stroll. There was no big plan, no flashy flirting, just dialogue, mirth, and a sense of ease. At one point, a lock of her hair fell across her face, and the man she was with softly moved it aside. She said what stood out wasn't the deed itself, it was how it felt. There was no doubt, no mess. She said it felt organic, like he was already near to me even before he touched me. That's what you're seeking to comprehend. Not how to do something, but how to produce the kind of company where seconds like that occur without effort. Now, here's the deeper mental stratum. When a lady reacts positively to that grade of contact, it's because multiple systems in her mind have bonded at once. Her visceral mind feels safe. Her visceral mind doesn't sense harm. Her social mind feels bond and her frame follows. This is why you'll often hear ladies say things like, "I don't know why, but I just felt easy with him." That "I don't know why" is everything we've been discussing about. It's not chaos, it's internal light. Now let's bring this back to you in a useful way, because comprehending this is potent, but applying it is what turns your experiences. Here's what I want you to take with you from all of this. Stop centering on results. Stop thinking in terms of how do I get her to like me or what should I do next. Instead, shift your focus to this one inquiry. How does she feel in my company right now? Because if the answer is easy, open, at ease, you're already shifting in the right path. If the answer is unsure, stressed, or far, no deed or method will override that. And this is where visceral skill becomes your greatest asset. Pay heed not in a hyper-analytical way, but in a centered, alert way. Feel the contact. Don't just act it. Let seconds breathe. Permit silence when it occurs. See the subtle shifts because allure lives in those small, quiet areas, not in the loud, blatant. Now, I want to leave you with something that might test the way you've been thinking about all of this. What if the aim was never to win her over, but to produce an area where she organically wants to move nearer? What if instead of hunting cues, you became someone who comprehends them and reacts in a way that feels right, not forced? That's where real bond starts. And that's what most people never learn. If this gave you a new view, if you feel like you're starting to see things more clearly, take a second and tap that like button. It aids more than you think, and it informs me you want deeper dialogues like this. Drop a note. 2. I truly like to know what's 1 second you felt where someone's company made you feel instantly easy or instantly shaky. Those views count, and if you haven't already, join, because this is just the start. There are strata to allure, bond, and human habits that most people never scan. But once you do, everything turns. The reality is basic, but not always easy to take. Contact isn't about power. It isn't about plan. It's a dialogue, one that occurs without terms. Every motion, every reaction, every subtle shift is telling a tale about trust, safety, and visceral bond. And when you learn to read that tale, not force it, not rewrite it, but truly comprehend it, you stop speculating, you stop overthinking, you stop trying to be someone you're not, and you start bonding in a way that feels real for both of you. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is really about. Not getting nearer to her frame, but being someone she feels safe getting nearer. All from Lauren's psychology log.